What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. This is my betting breakdown video for UFC San Antonio. We have Corey Sandhagen going against Marlon Vera.
I need all the wins, yeah. Harder than all that is. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out.
And we are back for another betting breakdown video. This week breaking down an 11-fight card in UFC San Antonio. We were supposed to have 14 fights on this card. We lost my favorite fighter, Liang Na. We lost that fight late last week. We lost the Tamirez Vidal Haley Cohen fight, which, who cares about that? But we lost the Manuel Torres Trey Ogden fight, which I had like 2.5 units on that fight as a whole. So yeah, I had 15 units on this card prior to Friday, and then now I'm down to like around 12.25 units. So yeah, that Manuel Torres fight was a big part of my night. So that sucks. Now it's a good fight, but we still have a good card as a whole. Before we get started, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I do appreciate that a lot. And then I'll be going through these fights from a betting perspective and a betting perspective only. If you want a further, more in-depth breakdown on why I'm betting what, why I'm picking who, I did post a full card breakdown and prediction video on Wednesday, and then I also did a live stream on Friday. So be sure to check that out. I'm going to be trying to get through this a little bit quicker than usual. I'm not feeling well. It feels like somebody's just taking a hammer and smashing me over the head with it multiple times. That's how I'm feeling right now. And just looking forward to this week off. It's been an 8-week stretch. I've went 5-2 in terms of winning and losing events. I'm very happy with that. Hoping to end this 8-week stretch with the win on San Antonio here. But yeah, it's going to be good to kind of take this week off, regroup a little bit, get ahead a little bit, and maybe beat some line movement for UFC 287, which is coming back next month. So very happy with how this 8-week stretch has played out, other than me getting very sick towards the end. But it happens when you're taping fights like Tamirez Vidal, Haley Cohen. But anyway, let's get into it, guys. Yeah, like I said, my night took a hit right off the bat before the card even started. Losing that Torres fight, I was very high on the under, and I'm very high on violence in this card in general. This is a card where we have a lot of closely lined fights. I think the biggest favorite's only like minus 250, something like that. So yeah, a lot of closely lined fights. This card here, a lot of fights that can go either way. I think it's a violent card. I think it's a card where I'm looking at unders. I'm looking at fight doesn't goes. And that's kind of how I'm playing this card. So we'll see if it works out. We kick off the night with a violent fight. Venetia Salvador going against Victor Ultimarano. We got Salvador, who has that 100% finish rate. Ultimarano, he's a black belt in his own right, but yeah, Venetia Salvador's a guy that I remember taping on Dana White's Contender Series, and you go back and watch Salvador's tape, and to put it nicely, I mean, he looked horrible. He's very wild, very sloppy on the feet. He can be taken down. He's getting submitted by low-level guys. He's fighting very bad competition. Like the win he had prior to the Contender Series was against an 0-0 guy. And then so he shows up and he just looks like a completely different fighter, which that is it can happen. I mean, I think he's only 24 years old right now, or he's still super young. So we're going to see improvements out of this Venetia Salvador guy. But yeah, prior to the Contender Series, I was not impressed with him whatsoever. But I think he got much better. He's a very dangerous guy. He's going to go after it. I mean, the power he has for a flyweight is very impressive. I was looking to potentially fade Salvador here, but after going and watch Ultimarano, I don't know. I'm just not impressed with Ultimarano. I think if he can get this fight down to the mat, he could potentially get a sub here. But on the feet, Ultimarano, I'm not in love with the striking. I think he's very hittable, and I think Salvador maybe knocks him out here. So I actually like Salvador to win this fight, but I'm still not completely sold on the guy to where I want to put my money on him. What I do want to put my money on, though, is violence here. So I have one unit on the under 2.5 rounds. I got it at minus 125, and it's still around there. It's around minus 130 right now. So didn't beat a ton of line movement on it, which is fine. I'm going with Salvador fight to end under 2.5 rounds here. Salvador has, how many fights does he have? It's a good amount, like 20 around there. 18 fights, and 17 of them have finished inside the, no, 16 of them. No, 17. 17 of them have finished inside the distance. He has only been to decision once, and it was a decision loss. So I kind of see it as Salvador, like a round one knockout, or Ultimarano with a submission in the second or third round there. But I think this fight is a violent fight, and I think it does finish. Speaking of violence, we have the violence man himself, Daniel De Silva, going against CJ Vergara. So a lot of you guys know this. FanDuel Sportsbook put out totals early last week for pretty much every single fight, and they set it at minus 112. It was FanDuel I think Bodog, and then there was, I think it might have been Unibet. And they set these totals at 2.5 rounds, minus 112 to the over the under. So my biggest bet of the night is on that under 2.5 at minus 112. Obviously, that line is not there, and FanDuel, thanks to them, they're not going to void that, it looks like. But yeah, I'm very high on the under 2.5 rounds here, very high on violence in general. I have the under 1.5 rounds in a parlay. My night pretty much comes down to this fight ending inside the distance. At this point, you got to look at the under in this matchup. You got to look at the fight won't start round 3 as a parlay piece. I did personally parlay the under 1.5 rounds in this fight at minus 210 on Bovada Sportsbook, but you can still get it like minus 190 on DraftKings Sportsbook, and I'll go over my other parlay piece in a second. But yeah, I'm 4 units deep in terms of violence in this matchup, which is kind of crazy to say because it's a flyweight fight, but it's a Daniel Silva fight. This guy's never seen the third round. This is the definition of a killer-be-killed fighter. You know, I question his heart, his toughness, his durability. I think Vergara pressures early and finishes Silva probably in the first round. So I like the unders here. The fight doesn't go under 2.5. Fight won't start round 3, even under 1.5. I think this is a very violent fight because it is a Daniel Silva fight. But I like Vergara to win this fight. If you like Silva, you bet him to win in the first round because he has about 2 minutes of gas, but that's about it. But yeah, my night pretty much comes down to this matchup finishing inside the distance. More violence here. Trevin Giles going against Preston Parsons. I mean, the violence numbers in this fight is insane, and then I also like it stylistically. So Preston Parsons has finished all but one of his wins. He's only been to decision once. Look at these losses. Trevin Giles finished in all 4 of his losses, all 4 of those coming in the UFC. He's been submitted twice. He's been knocked out twice. Preston Parsons, he's been finished in all 3 of his losses. So I like it from a numbers perspective, and then you look at it from a stylistic perspective, right? You have Trevin Giles, who's going to be live for the knockout when this fight's on the feet. Trevin Giles has a lot of power. Preston Parsons is very hittable. You know, we've seen him knocked out twice in his career. And then on the flip side, you know, Preston Parsons, his nickname is Pressure, right? They call him Pressure because that's what he does. I mean, he pressures. He uses his cardio, his pace as a weapon, and, you know, we've seen Giles break more times than not in the past. So I'm more so on the Preston Parsons side here. I think he does consistently take down Trevin Giles, wears on him, and then eventually finishes him in the second or third round. But yeah, Giles is going to have opportunities to land a big shot here. But I like Parsons by sub, and I did play the fight doesn't go to decision. I have 2 units on it at minus 185, so that line has moved a tad. It's still around minus 200, minus 215. I still like violence here. I like the fight doesn't go to decision. I will say I would opt for that fight doesn't go to decision rather than the under 2.5 round, just because we have seen Giles go into the third round a couple times and get finished in the third round, so I would opt for that extra 2.5 minutes if you're going to play it. But yeah, I like violence here as well. The fight doesn't go to decision. The pick is going to be Parsons, but I think both guys are allowed to finish this one. Steven Peterson going against Lucas Alexander. Nothing sticking out here. Like, I have a hot take. It's not even a hot take. I mean, I'm picking Peterson to win by submission. Peterson, I believe, is a brown belt or a black belt in BJJ. He does go for a lot of submissions. Has not got one in the UFC. He only has a knockout. But Lucas Alexander, the submission defense is a concern for me. He's been submitted in all 3 of his losses. Got submitted early in the first round in his UFC debut. So yeah, I was thinking Peterson by submission. Let me get it around plus 1,000 because this guy's not finishing anybody in the UFC outside of Martin Bravo. And no, they have the sub prop at plus 350. So I'm not, I'm not playing Steven Peterson by sub at plus 350. It is not worth it, but that was the only thing I was maybe considering in this matchup. In terms of the fight and how it plays out, I think it's close, it's competitive, but I think Peterson has more ways to win this fight. I think he takes this fight down to the mat and wins a close decision or potentially gets that submission, like I said, but no bet for me on this one. Moving on, we got Tucker Lutz going against Daniel Pineda. Yeah, more violence. It's a Daniel Pineda fight. Daniel Pineda, kind of like Daniel Silva, is a guy that has about 1 round of gas. I mean, you see it there. Daniel Pineda, a 100% finish rate in over a 40-fight sample. I mean, you never see numbers like that. On top of that, Pineda has been finished in 9 of his 14 losses. This guy is another guy that when going gets tough, he looks for the door. We saw it in his last couple matchups, like in the Cub Swanson matchup. He had nothing left after the first round. In the Andre Feely matchup, he really had nothing left after the first 2 minutes in that one. But, you know, especially in that second round, he was done. You know, luckily for him, Feely poked him in the eye and it was turned into a no contest, but he was on his way to getting knocked out. This is how I'm playing this fight. I think first and foremost, the fight doesn't go to decision is fine. I would like a better price on it, though, just because Tucker Lutz is not the best finisher in the world. It kind of reminds me of the Jack Shore Makwan Americani fight, where, yeah, Jack Shore is not the best finisher in the world, but when you have a guy in Makwan who has 5 minutes of gas, you know, you're probably going to get a finish. And I did hit the Jack Shore round 2 last week, which was nice, and I'm planning on doing that here. You know, I put a quarter unit on Daniel Pineda to win in the first round, DraftKings Sportsbook at plus 800. I think that's how he wins. I think that is literally his win condition. So instead of playing the money line on Pineda, I'm playing that first round prop at plus 800 for a quarter unit. What I also did, like last week with Jack Shore, I put a quarter unit on the second and third rounds for Tucker Lutz. Again, this guy's not a finisher. He has, some finishes outside the UFC, but on the Contender Series, he has not finished anybody. In the UFC, he's not finished anybody. But I feel like Daniel Pineda is going to gas out. He's going to get very tired, and I think Tucker Lutz finishes him that second or third round. I put a quarter unit on Tucker Lutz to win in round 2, plus 575, and then I put a quarter unit on Tucker Lutz to win in round 3, plus 1,000. Quarter unit on that on DraftKings Sportsbook. So decent numbers there. You would like a little bit better prices on these late props, but they kind of know what that Pineda fades here. So I'm looking for either Pineda to win in the first round, Tucker Lutz to win in the second or third, and if either of those outcomes happen, it's going to be a nice fight for me there. But yeah, either way, I think this fight finishes inside the distance because it is a Daniel Pineda fight. Chidi and Jaquani going against Albert Duraev. Again, we talked about FanDuel dropping those totals a week early and just completely messing them up. I was able to get 2 units down on the under 2.5 here. So that was nice. Probably should even put more on it. And then I also have the fight doesn't go to decision in a parlay. And that's going to close out the only parlay of the card for me. So I have the fight doesn't go to decision in the Chidi Duraev fight minus 285, parlayed with the under 1.5 rounds in the Vergara to Silva fight minus 205. It came out to plus money, plus 101, half a unit on Bovada Sportsbook. So yeah, I have 2.5 units invested in terms of some violence here. I think it's a really good violence spot. They have a combined, it's a ton. Like it's a combined 11 out of 12 of their losses have came inside the distance. And then stylistically, I love this spot for violence just because you have Njokuani, who has a ton of power on the feet, could absolutely knock out Duraev, who's been knocked out in all 4 of his losses. And then Duraev, if he's able to get on top, I think he can absolutely finish Njokuani. We've seen Njokuani finished on the mat, a ton throughout his career, actually. In terms of a pick, I like Chidi here to win this fight, win it by knockout, win it by early knockout as well. I mean, the power Chidi has is insane. Nobody actually goes out there and knocks out Marc-Andre Barrio. He did it in 16 seconds. This guy's power is no joke, and I don't think Duraev has the best wrestling. So, yeah, I like violence first and foremost, but even the Chidi money line is kind of sticking out to me a little bit here just because I struggle to see Duraev getting that wrestling going, and if he's not, I think he's kind of in trouble. But if Duraev does get that wrestling going, if he is able to get on top, it's going to be bad for Chidi. So it's one where I'm probably going to stay away from a money line perspective, but I think the fight doesn't go as a parlay piece is still very good. It's only minus 275, minus 285, and then the under 2.5 is a parlay piece. And even don't hate like the under 1.5 rounds, but more so on that 2.5 and fight doesn't go for me. So yeah, 2.5 units total for me on some violence here. I think it's another violent fight. Manel Kape going against Alex Perez. So I was able to get the under 2.5 rounds here, plus 110 on BetOnline Sportsbook on Sunday. That line got just obliterated shortly after. I even missed out on, it was like plus 130, plus 120. So I missed out on that, but obviously a good line there. At this point, I still like violence. I still like the under 2.5 rounds around minus 160, minus 170. Don't mind like the fight won't start round 3. I think this fight probably even finishes in the first round, to be honest, just because Alex Perez, this is a guy that's going to go after it. This is a guy that's going to make this a war, and that's only going to leave him, getting open to getting knocked out, getting subbed. Alex Perez has been subbed a concerning amount of times. He's been subbed 5 times, has been subbed in the first round in back-to-back fights. I really question the motivation of Alex Perez at this point. So yeah, I like Manel Kape. And another hot take for me this week was, hey, Manel Kape by sub. Only plus 450. Like, get out of here. Get out of here. I mean, this guy's not subbing anybody. I mean, he almost subbed David Dvorak in his last fight, but I need a much better price for a Manel Kape sub. So I'm not playing the sub for Kape, but I do think he finishes Perez in the first round, whether it is a sub, whether it's a knockout. I think the under 2.5 rounds is probably the best way to play this. But even like the under 1.5, maybe as a sprinkle at plus money, I don't hate that as well. But I'm on the under 2.5, 1 unit on it, plus 110. And I still like it where it sits at minus 160, minus 170. Macie, Barber, Andrea Lee, yeah, nothing here. I think it's a close fight. I think it's going to go to decision. The judges are terrible. They're probably going to get it wrong. The only thing I could say here would be the fight to end by split decision, plus 400 on DraftKings, but I don't really want any money on this fight. I think it's going to be close, though. I think it's going to be close. There could be some hometown cooking going on with Andrea Lee. But it's a pass for me. I see why people like Barber. She should be able to, take this fight down to the mat. She should be the stronger fighter. But in terms of the striking, I think Lee's the better striker here, unless Barber's made some significant improvements. But I don't know. I see this being close and going either way, but I don't want to put any money on this one. Should be like a split decision type fight. I do want money on this next one, though. Nate Landwehr going against Austin Lingo. So I have 3 bets here, and I don't typically do like these crazy prop sprinkles, but these are calling my name here. So what I did, first and foremost, I put a 1.25 units on the fight to end by knockout at -108. Love that line. I think this fight does finish. I mean, I'm kind of shocked at where these violence numbers are sitting at. Like the under is like -120. The fight doesn't go like -150. Like these guys are going to go to war from the jump. I mean, this is going to be probably the fight of the night, and there's going to be multiple finishing opportunities from both sides, right? So I put the fight to end by knockout, 1.25 units, -108. And then what I also did was I put a very, very small sprinkles on some of these Nate Landwehr sub props. Like Nate Landwehr by sub was a spot I was looking at. It's plus 900 around there. But his round 2 sub was plus 3,300. So I put 0.15 units on that, $15. And then his round 3 sub is plus 5,000. So I put 0.1 units on that, like $10 to win like 500. So I think this fight does finish. I think the best way to play this is that either fight ends it by knockout and then sprinkle those Landwehr sub props because they are very juicy, or just play the fight doesn't go, play the under 2.5 rounds. But that's kind of how I'm playing it. 1.5 units on this fight total, looking for some violence, whether it's a knockout on either side or whether it's Nate Landwehr getting a second or third round sub, which would make me very happy. I mean, he goes for submissions, a lot of them. Was able to get one against Klein, was able to almost lock up a couple against David Onama. You know, I don't think Lingo's the best grappler. I see Lingo put in a bunch of bad spots as well. I think that sub's very much on the table if Landwehr wants to take it there, but I'm hoping he gets it in the second or third round. That's kind of how I'm playing it there. Holly Holm, Yana Santos, nothing here. I do like some DGen parlays on my betting article on the website, and then Holly Holm is in it because I think she should win this fight. I don't really see where Santos wins this fight outside of Holly Holm being old. I mean, Holly Holm, 41 years old, that's a concern. Do I want to put like big money, Holly Holm, like $250 to win 100? No, I don't want to do nothing like that. But in like a DGen parlay, I think she's somebody that should go out here and win the fight. So that's how I'm looking at it. But other than that, I don't have any interest in this fight. Yana Santos, she's coming off of a layoff, coming off of a pregnancy just like less than a year ago. Like, you know, Holly Holm should win this fight, but the age is something that would scare me away from laying any serious money on this fight. And then Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Vera. Yeah, nothing here outside of, I think the overs are fine. I like the fight starts round 2, round 3 as potential parlay pieces, like the over 1.5, 2.5 as potential parlay pieces. That's kind of how I would attack this main event. I was kind of looking at Marlon Vera finish only as a potential spot, but they're all over. It's like minus 200, something like that. So yeah, nothing here for the main event officially for me, but I will be probably sprinkling those overs. The fight starts round 2, round 3, and potential parlays, but that's about it for me. The pick's going to be Vera, but I'm not as confident in Vera as I was, say, in like the Edgar fight or like the Cruz fight or the Font fight, just because Sandhagen, I think he's, very durable. Whereas, I don't think Cruz had the best durability at this point of his career. Same thing with Frankie Edgar, right? But yeah, Sandhagen, he's super durable, and that gives me some slight pause. But I will be rooting for Marlon Vera. But it's a tough matchup. But it's a fight that I feel like can play out close and competitive, just because I feel like Sandhagen, he's going to be the minute winner. He's going to be throwing more, but it's going to be Marlon Vera that's landing the big shots across the 5 rounds, and I think the finishing upside's on the Marlon Vera side. So I'm going to stay away, though, but the pick is going to be Vera for that one. That's about it, guys. It's just violence for me on this card. I think it's a very violent card. I'm kind of upset about the Manuel Torres fight getting called off because I had like 2.5 units on the under 2.5 in that fight. Manuel Torres never been out of the first round once, so hopefully he gets rebooked, gets in there quickly so we can bet violence in that fight. But yeah, still like the violent spots. Looking at the Pineda Lutz, Giles Parsons, Salvador Ultimarano, Perez, Chidi Darayev, De Silva fight, looking at them to hopefully all finish inside the distance for a potential sweep here. But hopefully hit most of those, like 7 fights, 7 violent spots, hoping to hit maybe 4 out of 7, 5 out of 7, which would be perfect. But yeah, just looking for some violence here on a card where I feel like it's kind of tough from a money line perspective. Not a lot of favorites you feel really good in, and even like not a lot of dogs you can have a ton of confidence in. So I'm looking at this from a prop perspective and hoping to end this 8-week stretch with a winning week and keep the ball rolling here. So that's been it, guys. You guys can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, and best of luck for UFC San Antonio. Enjoy the week off, and we'll be right back with UFC 287. I'll be trying to get some early content out next week. And yeah, guys, good luck. Let's make some money and enjoy the fight. See you guys later.